Let's slip cast a mug. To do that, we'll need a few things. First, we'll need plaster mold for our vessel. This is basically a tumbler shape. And then we need a mold for the handle we want to use. And of course, we'll need our slip. Hi, I'm Kent. I've been wanting to replace my daily driver coffee cup for a while, and I think I have all the components to do so. Let's go ahead and slip cast my new coffee mug. So when I was designing this form here, I was very much thinking of replacing my coffee mug. I don't have any of these fired right now, so I can't really show you the end result. Although I do have the design proof I printed out. This is one of the first things Shapecast creates for you, so you can print it out if you want and get a sense of the form. This has a design language similar to several of the other forms I've made. This one's a little bit wider, so it holds a little more liquid, and it should be close to the same size in terms of volume as my current coffee cup. So this mold will create a vessel like this, and we can use it as a cup, but I want a handle too. So here is one handle mold, although I have a selection. So first is the D handle. This is a relatively straightforward design. Basically something like this. I have some molds of a variety of different sizes. Actually, I think this one here is exactly this size. So for me, this is a 3-finger handle. And on the other side here, I have my ear-shaped handle. So this one swoops up and down. I don't think I have any fired pots with that either right now. And then the last one, I have this more C-shaped handle. I've never used this mold. It's fresh, as you can probably tell. The other one that I have is slightly smaller, so this one is a larger size. Both of these are also on the Shapecast webpage if you want them. So I think I'm going to go ahead and make all 3 of these, and I'll see which one I like the best. This one's closest to my current handle. I have another mug that has a handle very similar to this, and I figure I'll try this one as well. So in addition to this mold, I have 2 more as well, and these have also never been used. I made these when I was experimenting with prototypes of the new version of Shapecast that uses the grooves and attachments for the system. And I knew I'd want to make several of these pots, so I went ahead and picked this mold for my testing. So these are perfectly good to use. So slip casting a mug is relatively straightforward. These are separate for 2 different reasons. One is so that you can mix and match. You can mix a vessel with the different handles. You can design them separately. The other problem is, from what I understand, molds with attached handles are much more finicky, and since the goal of Shapecast is to let everyone go ahead and create their own designs, I think that would add a lot of constraints that I frankly don't really understand, and it would probably be really hard to convey to you as the users of Shapecast to go ahead and design yourself. Since the handle creates captive plaster, when the clay shrinks, it's going to want to shrink down. And I think on the handles it's all right because this end is free, it's not constrained. However, as soon as it's actually part of the body of the mug, it now has this closed circle, and it's going to want to shrink down and hold on to the plaster. Early in my slip casting days, I had a problem with clay shrinking around the foot and grabbing on it would cause cracks. So I think it can be done, but I think the draft angles, basically the tapers you need around the handle itself in the mug, are really critical there. Right now I'm liking attaching the handles. It really isn't that big of a deal. Only since we're slip casting, we don't have to worry about the form so much. All that hard work is done by our molds. So let's go ahead and get things set up. First thing I want to do is assemble the molds. Make sure there isn't any loose clay in there. These have some notches on there, some registration keys. These are basically for rough alignment. You'll want to make sure that everything is lined up by looking down inside, because they can shift around just a little bit. And I have a bunch of rubber bands. There you go, just like that. I like to go ahead and move the rubber bands around, so basically distributing the clamping force more or less evenly. Do a double check, make sure everything is lined up. All right, so those are good. These molds have never been used, so they're good. And this last one here has been cleaned out, so we're ready to go. So now we'll move on to slip. I like putting slip into the handles first, since these will go ahead and cast solid. That will give them a few extra minutes to absorb the water from the slip and solidify. So my slip's in this bucket here, and my recent upgrade of the 90-degree elbow I've really been liking. So let's take a container, and since this is my reed clay, I'm going to run it through a sieve. So let's go ahead and drop some in this container here. That should be plenty. And now I don't need to sieve it again. I can just pour it right into the spout. And the level will come up the other side. It'll self-level. Although you can always help it along if you need to. It's that one. Number 2. All right, just like that. We'll go ahead and hold on to the slip because we'll use it to attach the handles later. Let's put it off to the side. And these are good right now. They're just going to chill, let the plaster do its magic, absorb the water, turn it into our handles. Next is the body of our mug. Same thing, get our mold in place. Grab my sieve. And all the way up into the slip well. Not too tall because we need to move it. Next mold, this one's actually a little bit shorter in the redesign. But the cavity is exactly the same. All right, now I'll let the plaster do its thing. People often ask me how long I let my slip sit in my plaster molds, and the answer is about half an hour, maybe 25 minutes. The less time you have it sit, the thinner the walls will be. The more time, the thicker they will be. However, this really depends upon your slip and your plaster and your weather and a whole bunch of other things. Slip cast a pot and note how long you let the slip dwell. Fire it, and if you want the pot thicker or thinner next time, go ahead and adjust the time accordingly. Iterate a few times and you should be able to get what you want. All right, time to check in on the pots. The handle's looking good. You can see the level of the slip has gone down, but it's still within the sprue area. If you wanted to, you could top it up, but I think these are okay. I'm just going to go ahead and let these continue to absorb the water. However, these are ready to pour out right now. Just pick it up and carefully dump it out. It's still dripping a little bit. So bring it over here to my homemade drainage table and set it as an angle. That way the slip can run down the wall. Otherwise it'll have a tendency to hang on to the bottom of the pot and form little bumps. All right, these will continue to drain. Usually they drain within just a few minutes with my slip. I've started to track how many pots have come out of my molds. This one's done 3 so far, so we'll add one more. And both of these are new, so they'll get their first mark. All right, we'll be back when it's time to demold the components for our mugs and attach the handles. These have been sitting for another 25-30 minutes. Partway through I went ahead and flipped them up. There's still a little bit of liquid slip on the ends of the handles, but I'm pretty sure they have cast solid by now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and dump out this extra slip so that the ends can dry out a little bit. That's mostly just so that it's easier to handle and we're not dripping slip everywhere. So I'll do that first. There we go, like that. All right, there's all 3. So we'll set these off to the side for a minute. And if you look at our molds, you can tell that they're ready. The clay started to shrink and it's releasing from the plaster. So you don't always see that. This one here I don't, for instance. Since these have all been sitting at the same time and the plaster's all the same, they're good to go. I've also done this a whole bunch, and just going after the time after you figure out your plaster and your slip is enough. If you have a banding wheel, you can pull it out, although it's not required, so I'll show you what it looks like without it. I just take a blade, at this point it's not very sharp, and we want to go down to the slip well, only we don't want to carve into the plaster. So we want to go in at an angle, and you can feel where the slip well is. That shelf right there, and just slide around. Careful not to bump your finger into the soft clay. It's a good way to deform your pot before it's even started, really. Just go all the way around to where we started, and you can just lift up. All that can be thrown in the reclaim. And there's our pot. I can also tell that it's released because it's dropped down just a hair from when I just cut it. It means there was a little bit of void in the bottom for it to move. Get the others cut up, same thing, kind of at an angle. All right, so now these are ready to demold. These are small enough that you could turn over and palm it, and I did that for a long time. The problem is often the rim will slightly deform, even when you push it back, because you're reorienting all the platelets in the clay. It can go back to the bent state, what is commonly referred to as memory, although that anthropomorphizes the clay. So we want to try and get it out and not deform it. So I have some cardboard. I cut to approximately the right size. Pick it up, just pull it out like that. And I'm missing a wear board. And gently transfer it over. And then you go ahead and clean off the molds the rest of the way, and then put them away so that they're ready for use the next time once they dry out. And go ahead and work on our handles here. I like to get a separate wear board. So here, just take off the rubber bands. And then one side will release and the other one will stick usually. All right, we got one and one. There we go. Got a little bit of flash on the handle, but this is really very little. And that's what it looks like straight out of the mold. Go ahead and grab this. And I like to hang it off the edge. The sprues are wider than the handle themselves, so that gives a place for it to rest. I can clean this up real quick. And scrape out the excess clay. Give it a quick wipe down. Put it back together. Let it dry out, and it too is then ready for next time. All right, and since the handles have this extra clay on them, I like to just do a rough trim. So again, just take a knife where the taper meets the handle, just slice right down. All these go into the reclaim. And you can see there's a little divot there, so it didn't quite cast solid, but we're going to cut this back just a little bit more. So I think we'll be good. This one. And that one's fine. This one's much narrower. All right, next step is to attach the handles. However, feeling them, some of them are a little soft still. So I'm going to give it a few more minutes to firm up, and then we'll go ahead and do the handles. All right, I've given these about another half an hour, and they're feeling more firm, which is good. Still soft though. I think our handles are still in good shape, so everything's still nice and wet so we can attach things. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the excess slip that we set aside and a brush, and we're going to use the slip to put on the end of the handle and attach. However, before we do that, we need to trim the handles so they match the curvature of the pot. We can also trim things back, so if we want a smaller handle, it's relatively easy to do. You can always cut, you can't add. That's the reason some of these are a little bit longer. So see if I can show you this way. So That there would work, but I think it's a little bit big. The easiest way to do it is just like when you're pulling a handle, put it behind the mug, and you can move it in and out and see exactly where you want it. It's hard for me to see and to show you at the same time, so let me go ahead and do that real quick. And then I'm going to eyeball straight down, make a mark, make another mark. There we go, put a couple score lines, and so this here will be the plane in the pot, and again, you can adjust that however you want. Now we need to cut down, but we don't want to cut straight down because we have a curvature to our pot, so we want to swoop in a little bit. So I'm going to go in narrowest at the middle and then come back out. Pick it up, try it out. Actually looks pretty good. You can see how the curve we cut in more or less matches for both of them. And before I attach it, I'm going to deal with this seam line real quick. Again, the clay is really soft, be careful. Get the biggest part with a knife and then take a sponge. There we go, no more seam line. The outside we can do once it is attached. I'll take our slip. Stab some on the end here. And you really only have one chance to stick this, so you have to look carefully. Don't want it there. Give it a little bit of a squeeze. Don't deform your pot. And it's stuck. But there's still a little bit of a crack there, so I'd like to take a little bit more slip. Just drop it down into that crack, fill it up. And you might need to go back a couple of times depending on how good your cut is. And I spilled a little bit of slip onto the pot, but that's okay, we can clean it up later. So, one mug. Next one, same thing. So I think I'm going to go ahead and leave the same length, so I just need the curvature. If we wanted to, we could cut a little bit more at the top so the handle itself is more vertical. I think I'm going to leave it at the angle of the mug itself. That is, the angle of the handle will match the angle of the vessel, the body. Number two. Last one again. I think I probably want to leave it the same size. I don't need to trim it back. Let's cut the curve into it again. And there are 3 mugs. I'm going to go ahead and cover these up with plastic overnight. That way the water levels in the clay can all even out. We have the body, we have the handle, and then we have the slip that we added. And by covering it up, that means the water can kind of homogenize. It can move around as it will to get to the same level everywhere. That will help prevent any cracks from forming. Then we can finish cleaning everything up. These have all sat overnight and they firmed up some. Let's go ahead and finish cleaning up the handles and do the rims of the pots. To seam these, I tend to just use an X-Acto knife. This one's kind of dull, but can slice off the biggest part of the seam. And if you spilled any slip onto the body of the pot itself, you can get it there. Be careful not to dig in though. So there's still a hint of the seam, but there isn't anything protruding. And then from there, take a sponge, smooth it out some more. And depending on your handles, getting inside is a little bit tricky. So I have sponge on a stick. It helps get into the corners just enough to knock down that seam. You could just do all of this with a sponge. The knife's a little bit faster, but also has greater consequences if you make a mistake. All right, those are looking pretty good. And then for the rims, I like to use a big sponge when I can. And we start with the raw cut edge. Spin it around a few times. Nice, and round it over. Same thing, cut edge. I'm not really pushing down much at all. All right, there we go. So at this point, I'll go ahead and let them slowly dry out the rest of the way. Once they're bone dry, I might touch them up a little bit more. And in a future video, we'll finish the process. I'll bisque them and we can glaze them and check out my brand new mugs. I'm excited to try them out and see which one of the handles I like the most. Who knows, I might like them all. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Thanks.